In Valorant, you die to a lot of different things. Whether you're getting ulted, double flashed, or wallbanged, Valorant can be incredibly punishing over and over again. But what if I told you that great positioning is the key to not only die less, but get a ton more kills and shut down enemies? Now, one of the most frustrating ways to die in Valorant is to get utility dumped. Someone is spamming a flash, a KO knife, they're dogging you, they're droning you, and they're forcing you out of set positions over and over again, and most of the time you're gonna die as a result. Now, there's a couple really important things to understand about getting utility dumped and how to beat it. So first off, enemies want to take certain areas on the map to set up so that once they use utility, like a dog, like a flash, they have players ready to go and play off of that. So as an example, let's take bind on defense. If you allow enemies to take control of showers and A main for free, they can get set up in their prime position to dump the whole site with utility and play off it. Basically, if you allow them to get to those spaces for free and you stay in the same position you're in, you are basically gonna die with nothing you could do about it. So there are two core ways to actually disrupt this. Number one is make it harder for enemies to set up. As an example, pushing up and using utility aggressively when enemies are constantly pushing a certain area, taking space aggressively on defense with multiple people using utility, and making it so enemies have to use utility to retake areas and clear, mean they have less to dump when you're back at site. That's one of the most important things you can do, and adding these mix-ups in or showing the ability to do these things make it so that enemies have to be worried about certain cubbies and corners, and they are more likely to dump utility early and not save it all for you back at site. The other thing that you could do is position for a retake. Play off a site so that all this utility won't hit you, and then the enemy wasted all the utility and you can use all your utility to retake the space and help your team. It's really important that you make sure not to waste a ton of pieces of utility because you do need it for the retake, but the longer you can delay the enemy, the faster your team will be there and the more time y'all will have to work with for that retake, so that's really important. Now, another thing that you could do is look at how enemies are using utility and find ways to make a play to counteract it, because sometimes people come up with the same lineups, the same executes, they do the exact same things every single time. And responding to certain pieces of utility by the enemy with your own utility can be a way that you shut down an enemy's play and even turn the tables on them. That being said, regardless of how you play, if you're not able to hit shots on your enemy, you're not going to be able to shut them down, and it's going to be really hard for you to retake. Especially when you're trying to surgically take angles back and clear everything on your way back into sight, you need great aim, and our Aim God course on the SkillCapped website is the perfect thing for you, where we go over angles, positioning, how to aim, and warm-ups that you need to do to get better aim as quickly as possible. And with our rank improvement money back guarantee, if you don't climb, you don't pay. So what are you waiting for? Check it out right now in the links down below. Now, the next positioning tip we got to talk about is off angles versus safe angles. Sometimes people don't like to play in a commonly held angle even though it has a piece of cover next to them, because if they miss, they could dip behind the cover. However, enemies are far more likely to check these angles because these are safe known angles. And playing an off angle does give you an advantage because you're playing away from these angles, and while enemies are far less likely to check these areas, you are way more all in on hitting that shot, and if you whiff, it's gonna be really, really bad. Then you gotta understand that every single angle, hypothetically, would be an angle that people would clear. If you gave pros unlimited time, they would individually clear every single angle slowly and methodically until they get everyone out of every position or they cleared every single area. But you can't really do that, right? While you can clear a lot of angles, you don't have the time to clear every single angle. And the less and less time you have, the less angles that you can possibly clear, and the more powerful an off angle becomes. Understand that a safe angle, an angle that has normal cover, an angle where you're normally challenging, where everyone normally challenges from, these angles are going to be angles that people are going to try to clear. However, they do give you more options as far as if your enemy misses, or if you want to disengage, or if you want to run away based on information that there's like 5 people there, or you get flashed, or whatever the case may be. Having these safe angles give you a lot of options based on utility and enemies clearing you in the early stages of the round. But as the time starts ticking down more and more and more, enemies will start to only clear these safe angles and no other angle. They don't really have the time to just clear every single cubby corner space on the map, so they're really going to try to isolate the angles that you're probably in, and these are these powerful safe positions that give you cover. So in these situations, an off angle can be extraordinarily powerful. As an example, let's say the enemy has 15 seconds left, they're running across the map going all the way to try to plant on the other side of the map, and they don't really have time to clear like every single area or corner. They're gonna clear like 2 or 3 really safe, strong ones. But if you're standing in the open or in an angle that doesn't have cover, but you're all in on the shot, not only will the enemies not expect you to be there, but it will be a really easy shot and fight for you to win. Basically, in most cases, safe angles are going to be more powerful and more consistent. But off angles, when the enemy only have the ability to clear a select few angles, means that they will often just win you the fight for free. Then moving on to number 3, we do got to talk about weapon changes and how that should change your position. So as an example, if you have a shorty on a map on an eco round, you need to position yourself and play for enemies to get in your effective range. Now, if you get utility dumped, if you get smoked off, if you get dogged, this means oftentimes not giving up your position, even if there's a chance that you could die in said position. The reason that you do this is you got to understand that getting out of the positions you're in to make your weapon effective is almost as bad as dying in some regard. You're not able to do anything with the gun anymore. You're being put in a position where your gun becomes incredibly ineffective if you have to get forced out of that area. In a lot of ways, it's almost more valuable or more worth it for you to play for a higher risk play. Like, as an example, let's say you're playing Icebox A, enemies are coming A, you're playing defense, and you have a shorty, right? And you're playing right where the orb is, and your team smoke it off, and you hear a drone coming through and the enemy's rushing in. You could get tagged by the drone, run all the way back, go play retake. But guess what? You're stuck retake with a shorty. You lost the position, you were forced out of it, and you're not going to do anything or get any value that round. I mean, it's very unlikely that you're going to accomplish anything at all. But let's say you hear the drone, you push past the drone, you swing out of the smoke, you get 1, maybe 2 people with that shorty if you're an actual demon. Now, you might be saying, hey, that's a risky play, I might die, but you also got to understand that being forced away from that position already means that you're very unlikely to win or do anything in that round. And with your relatively low buying amount and already stacked economy in the other team's favor because they bought, it's worth playing higher risk because it could be the thing that actually turns the fight for your team. Like, imagine you get 1 or 2 there and then all of a sudden your team is able to win the numbers advantage. It could be an extremely big play that you're going to change how you play based on your weapon's effective range and the positions that they're effective in. And you could also take these concepts and apply them to every single weapon and also apply them to your opponent's weapons based on their economy. And that's also why economy should change how you position dramatically, because knowing what an enemy has or what they're going to buy should definitely change how you're going to play against them. Like understanding that on an eco round, enemies are more likely to play closer angles, they can play shotguns, they can play weapons that have extra ability to run and gun, and you should put extra effort into clearing these angles. It's far less likely they're going to take a strategic duel against you if they have cheaper guns that are going to operate on a different axis. You would much rather clear some of these close angles, maybe clear some of these longer martial angles, and recognize that because they have a certain set of economy, it can change how they play in certain ways. In a very similar way, if we're talking about ascendant or less on save rounds, people are far more likely to rush as a team when they have very cheap weapons. They do the strength in numbers tactics. They're probably going to rush in and really take space very aggressively, trying to trade out for a gun, because if 2 people rush you and you kill one of them, the other one kills you, they take your gun. That's a really great exchange for them if they have pistols and you have a rifle. So knowing this, if you change or adopt your playstyle in positioning more defensively, positioning more for retake, understand that I'm not going to get cheesed out by some of these strategies, these hyper aggressive strategies that enemies are hoping will get them a trade, get them a gun. That could be a great thing that you do, and you just look at the economy and adjust accordingly. Now, another thing is ultimates. I always tell you to track ultimates because it tells you how an enemy is going to play around, but especially on some maps when you're playing U-Haul, for instance, on Bind, or in a defuse situation on any map, understanding that some ultimates can affect how an opponent will play, and you can position for those. So making it so that you're positioned so you don't instantly die or get ulted by a brimstone ult, or you're positioned in a way that you can deal with certain ultimates and pieces of utility that come your way. These things are important, and keeping track of what ultimates enemies have can affect your play and make it so that you're positioned better and more insulated for some of these plays that enemies can make. Now, while I'm giving you a lot of tips on how you could better your position, how can you track enemy positions? And it's really as simple as this. I want you to, every time you're playing a game, I want you to think about areas on the map that you know for a fact no enemies are in and you control. I want you to visualize in your mind that those are bright green. Now, I do want to talk about all the neutral areas or areas you're not 100% confident in. Those would be different shades of yellow. from bright yellow all the way to an orange. The more orange they are, the more likely there could be an enemy there, but if they're pretty yellow, then it's pretty unlikely that an enemy's there. And then in red territory, it's very likely that an enemy could be there. I want you to keep this in mind, visually in mind. The longer that you don't have information on a place, the more red it becomes, right? If you have left a certain opening, like on B site on Ascent, the longer that there's no one holding that angle, understanding that there's no information coming from that area, but from your team, the more and more likely enemies could be there. And it needs to be kind of creeping in your mind. They could be there. They could have lurked up. Someone could have walked. Right when I left, someone could have walked, right? And the better you get at understanding that the second a piece of information is gone from an area, enemies can operate without you knowing at all. And they can be in places that you would not expect them to be unless you're constantly thinking about this. It needs to be that voice that's in the back of your head every single game, the where you're like, okay, I don't know 100%. This is a bright orange. This is a yellow. This is a red. I need to clear these angles. I need to clear this area so I don't get caught off guard and I don't get timing like I otherwise would. Now, there's two other core tips that you absolutely need to know if you want to have strong positions. Number one is good default positions give you options. You don't just fall over to an enemy swinging you or a piece of utility coming after you. I want you to imagine that you're blind randomly. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Knowing how you respond to certain types of utility and where you'll go, even if you don't have visual information, is a really, really important part of having good positions and playing them well. Another thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is the concept of compromising your position. So if an enemy knows you're there, they have confirmation that you're there, it is incredibly hard for you to make a play from that position without using some sort of utility. Enemies can hold, they can wait, they can play super defensive, they can double hold. There's a million things they can do when they know where you're at. And if you want to swing out challenge, you almost always should have a piece of utility backing you up. And I know in your mind, you're like, hey, I know where they're at. They know where I'm at. Let's both challenge each other. But you're giving up your strategical advantage because you're allowing an enemy to be ready and prepared for you to pop out. As a general rule, I would say never peek the same angle twice in a row without some sort of follow-up. A flash, a help from a teammate, some amount of assistance to make that play a bit stronger, or otherwise just leave the position altogether and leave the opponents once again guessing and clearing. Because the type of duels that you want to consistently have are duels from positions that enemies don't have perfect information that you're there. You see, as the aggressor, you have to clear so many different angles, so many different positions. You have to be wary of everything, and that's what you want. You want them to be wary of everything. You do not want them to have confirmation that you exist, and then you don't want them to be able to hard focus on only your area. You want them to have to play around everything so that they're a lot less prepared to play around you. But if you have any questions about positioning or having more impact in your games, definitely know down below, and check out SkillCapped, which is the best place to climb as quickly as possible. We offer a rank improvement money back guarantee, so if you don't climb, you don't pay. And with that, we offer mechanic courses, warm-up guides, game sense breakdowns, and so much more. So whether you're trying to master your new main or quickly climb the ladder risk-free, you got to check out our SkillCapped website right here, and we'll see you next time.